WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. I want to thank you for being with us today. We're coming to you from WCLN Radio, Star Communications Channel 16. We air Tuesday, Thursday at 7 p.m. We come to you first on 2:30 Tuesday each and every week. And as usual, we try to look for folks that have a busy schedule, that have a lot of things going on, that are doing stuff that impacts your life each and every day. And one of those people is Representative Dr. Raymond Smith. Raymond, thank you for being with us. And I also want to thank you and congratulate you on recently getting your doctorate degree. And I'll give you a little accolade and ring a bell for you on that. So thank you for coming today and talking to us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, JW. This is an absolute honor, and it's always a pleasure to speak with you and to have a platform to talk to the good folks of Sampson County. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, this whole COVID thing has brought a whole new virus, not only as it relates to our individual self, but in the way we do things, in the way we communicate and how we communicate. And so we're just blessed to be able to continue to bring this show to folks and bring them information that hopefully will help them and better understand what's going on in our society. I want to start out by reminding folks that you are District 21 representative, and you've got a portion of Sampson County, you got a portion of Wayne County. In essence, your predecessor was Dr. Larry Bell,
Yes.
dear friend of us all that many of us miss, and you're doing quite well from what I understand and filling those shoes.
Well, I tell you what, thank you for that. And Dr. Larry Bell has been one of my mentors for a number of years. When he first ran for the General Assembly, I was my mother and myself, he and my mother were both good friends. We did a lot to support Dr. Bell in his 18-year run in the General Assembly. And as I told him, and as I'll tell anyone, his shoes are way too big for me to fill, but I can give you the best Raymond Smith Jr. there ever has been. And I absolutely appreciate that. And yes, representing Sampson and Wayne County is an absolute honor. I'm a native of District 21, born and raised. Both of my parents are natives of Wayne County, and they're both deceased now, but I carry their legacy and their torch of community service. And I tell people all the time, the one thing I am not is a politician. I am a community servant, born and raised, and that's what I'll always be.
And that comes through. And with that aspect of community service, I'll mention to folks, you did have a stint with the military, United States Army, and I want to extend our appreciation and gratitude for your service as well.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute honor to serve my country. My father, Raymond Smith Sr., was a United States Marine, and one of the things that my father instilled in me was the mindset of being a servant, but also service to your country. I served in combat in Operation Desert Storm, and I was recently asked by someone, you know, did you receive any medals or awards? And I said no, and I said no without really thinking about it, because some of the things that I dealt with, I suppressed them over the years. And when I was looking through my military records the other day, I realized that I did receive an award and a medal from Desert Storm, and that medal was for the Army Commendation Medal for meritorious service during combat. So I don't make it a big deal. I don't make a big deal of it. It's just who I am. I just did what I was supposed to do.
Well, one of the things by saying that, I'd have to follow up that oftentimes I hear people say we don't have good role models, or we maybe need more role models. But the folks I talk to on this show quite often are some of the best role models I can imagine a lot of our young folks need to be looking to.
Well, thank you so much. And I had numerous role models myself, and Dr. Larry Bell was one of those role models and still is. I consult him to this very day. I've had times when I was in the General Assembly and a really tough bill came to the floor, and I would call Dr. Bell in a panic. And I said, Dr. Bell, what in the world should I do? And he said, well, first of all, you follow your conscience, because you're the one that's going to have to live with the decision that you make. But then he would sit down and give me some really sound advice. And it reminds me a lot of the advice my father and my mother both used to give me. And having character and integrity makes this job a lot easier. You don't have to worry about the decision you make if you make that decision based on your moral character, your Christian beliefs, and your integrity.
Well said. Well said. I want to start today somewhat in reality, kind of let folks know I've got so many subject areas here I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
It's highly likely that we probably won't get through with them all, but at least we're going to take a shot at it. And I'll start out with one I know you're familiar with, having experience with education in Wayne County. It's a whole area of education now. We're going through this process of trying to deal with COVID, with public education. And we're also at the same time trying to figure out from a year ago, I know I talked with you some time ago and we were talking about education and the importance of everything from pay raises to school facilities and all those kinds of things. But the state of North Carolina, like individuals, has suffered a huge blow in their financial capacity and capability. When you look at education now and you consider where we are, folks keep using the term, I can't wait to get back to normal. Will there ever be a normal in the world of education?
Absolutely not. And I say that with a high degree of optimism. And I say absolutely not from the perspective of, I believe we're going to get better than we ever have been before. I think we're moving in a different direction because business as usual had the state of North Carolina near the bottom as it relates to education across the nation. State of North Carolina has a long way to grow as it relates to education. One of the things that I've done recently in response to the Leandro ruling, and for those of you who may not know, Leandro was a court case that was brought against the state of North Carolina because it was proven that the state of North Carolina was not providing a free and equitable education for all students. Students in low wealth communities, students from minority communities were not receiving the same education as students from wealthy communities. And one of the things I've done is I sponsored and I helped to write a bill, House Bill 1129, which has yet to reach the floor. Hopefully in the next session, we'll get the chance to present that bill for consideration. And that bill is to ensure a basic sound education for all students in the state of North Carolina. And I'm very proud of that bill, and I encourage people to go online and look that bill up. And as I said before, I'm a primary sponsor for that bill, and I'm very proud of it. And I think it's going to move North Carolina in the right direction. And I don't think going back to normal is what we want. I think we want to move forward to a new norm.
Well, with that said, a lot of conversation about where we are now, and some schools looking at moving back or moving into a plan A where they will be back integrated into the school system and networking amongst themselves and that kind of thing. One of the things you just mentioned, I want to kind of tag with that, is that we've talked about in the past this idea that equality in education should not be represented by a zip code, that everybody should have that same equality. But really, in a lot of our rural areas, obviously you represent many of those. You see school districts and buildings that we need capital outlay money as well as other kinds of funds. But particularly in that world of capital outlay, we're talking millions of dollars. Do you see that as a state responsibility or a local government responsibility for buildings and structures?
I tell you, it's a very interesting question and very powerful question. I was watching a television show, a news show with Betsy DeVos, the U.S. Education Secretary, and she said that education was a state responsibility. It wasn't the federal government's responsibility to provide infrastructure. And she even went so far as to suggest that you can have education anywhere. You can have education under a tree outside. You can have education in one of the county museums. You can set up a room in there. You can educate someone anywhere. And that was her perspective. And not to say that I agree or disagree, but that is what the U.S. Secretary of Education said. And so as far as the federal government is concerned, it is a state's responsibility. So that being the case, as a state legislator, taking on that responsibility, because the federal government has said they're not going to, it is our responsibility. It has fallen upon us to provide that infrastructure. And in the recent budget debate, if you will, we tried to provide Sampson County and Wayne County with millions and millions of dollars in support for education as far as the basic infrastructure is concerned. The argument was between one side who wanted to promote the state capital infrastructure fund, which is called a SCIF, which is a pay-as-you-go plan where there would not be any debt incurred. And as long as there was money in the state budget, counties could draw that money down for projects. The problem with that was if there was ever a recession, which we all know recessions are going to come. There's no such thing as prosperity forever. Recessions are cyclical. They do come. Whenever a recession hits, that money is no longer available. So if there was a project underway, that project is halted right there, and there's no telling when the money would be available to complete that project. What the governor offered in his compromise proposal was a bond. And a bond is a debt. However, it is a good debt because the bond is a guarantee. If you draw down $30–40 million for a new school, you're going to get the $30–40 million, and there would be no way to stop that program. Plus, this is the best time, if ever, to borrow money because the interest rates are as low as they've ever been. And so we argued back and forth over that concept, a guaranteed infrastructure plan versus a infrastructure plan based on the availability of funds. And that was the argument, one of the biggest arguments in that budget. And I stand on the side of the bond because the bond would guarantee Sampson County and Wayne County the money that it needed in order to build up a infrastructure. And building new schools is one thing, but repair and renovation is, to me, the best way to go. We need to maintain what we do have to the best of our ability.
We're going to, as you can see, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back. I want to follow up with the education piece. I can't turn that loose that quick. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking about things that impact you.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you back. The name of the show is We Should Know. J.W. Simmons, your host. Been on the air now for over 10 years. We keep bringing this information to you. We kind of pride ourselves in allowing our guests to be able to express themselves with more than a 10 or 15 second sound bite. We're on the air for 50-minute content time with an in-depth discussion with our guests. And today, Representative Dr. Raymond Smith, Jr., District 21, right here in North Carolina, talking about something I know is near and dear to his heart and mine as well, and that's education. Because Representative Smith, it impacts students, it impacts people that we sometimes look at as a society and say could be the most important people in our lives is our children. So when we're talking about that, we were as we went out from the first break, we were talking about referendums, particularly bond referendums, and there's local bond referendums. What you were proposing is maybe we look at a state bond referendum. Tell us how you see that unfolded and how would that work? It would allow people to determine whether we had a bond or not. They would actually vote on that, correct?
That is correct. And the proposal, again, was in the state budget, and the argument was whether or not we wanted to borrow money or whether we wanted to pay as you go. And it became a stalemate over philosophy. And we should never put children in the middle of these types of arguments, in my humble opinion. Children should always come first. And the proposal that we made was for a statewide bond, and that bond would have affected Sampson County in this way. I know we have talked about the fact that we had a number of high schools, brand new high schools built in Sampson County, and the one high school that has not received its just due is Hopton High School. Hopton is in the middle of my district, and I absolutely support and advocate for a brand new high school for Hopton. However, what the bond would do is the bond would guarantee the money for Sampson County for that high school. And in essence, it would require that there would be a payback, but that payback would be over time, and the payback would be based upon the lowest interest rates we've seen in our history. And so with a SCIF, the amount would have been less as also, because the bond was going to give Sampson County an additional I think $6 to $10 million was going to be in addition to what was proposed in the initial budget. And so I stand at the ready to defend the decision not to accept that previous proposal, because I know we can do better for Sampson County. I know we can do better for Wayne County. There's too many opportunities here for us to allow them to pass through our fingers over political nonsense. And that to me is what it is. Because when it comes to children, there's no dollar amount that's too much.
And I think you probably just got a standing ovation from a lot of folks in the Hopton School District with that, because there's been a lot of discussion about that over time. And again, it comes down to how do we pay for it? Where's the affordability? One of the things that strikes me as you talk about education is the parallel between education and the economy. There's economic value with education, and whether it's community college system, public schools, those kinds of facilities tend to help bring industry in and also build communities. Give us your kind of observation on that as we look at this pandemic and its impact on the economy.
Well, as you well know, Sampson County is agriculture. It's rural. That's what we do. And in having been invited to a presentation over at Smithfield Foods down in Duplin County a couple of weeks ago, I was pleasantly surprised with some of the things that they're proposing. Smithfield Foods is what they're proposing is several programs that are going to invest in minority farmers. They want to create more farmers in the minority community. And they want to, of course, maintain what they have, but they want to increase these opportunities. And they have a program that I'm very excited about that's going to put some money where their mouth is as it relates to that. Also, the other thing that I'm really excited about what they're doing, they're going to mitigate the hog waste, because, you know, that was and is a issue between farmers and their neighbors. Well, what they're going to do is they've come up with some very innovative and creative ways to mitigate hog waste and turn that hog waste into natural gas, which the farmer themselves can sell or use. And I'm very, very excited about these programs, because to me, it's a win-win solution. But getting back to your basic question of economic development in the rural area looks like this: entrepreneurship, business ownership. One of the things that we struggle against and we are always challenged by, people talk about the great rural-urban divide. Well, it's real, because when you have companies like Amazon who are looking for places to set up their major multi-billion-dollar industries, they don't necessarily look in the rural areas, because what they're looking for the venues, the outlets, the major sports teams, the pro football, the pro basketball teams. They're looking for those areas where their employees can come and have this big grand social life. They don't look at the serenity and the calm and the low the low crime rate in the areas like ours, the quality of life. And so they look at more quantity. And so what we have to do in the rural area is we have to promote what we do best. And right now that's agriculture. And that is where my focus is. And I want to also focus on entrepreneurship from a holistic level. I'm challenging the General Assembly to invest money, and the governor has put his money where his mouth is. By this last proposal, he actually put money into development of small businesses and minority businesses at that. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm glad that the governor listened to those of us in the Black Caucus and those of us in the Democratic Caucus, because it is important that we develop people's opportunity to make a living. And in the rural area, that is imperative. That's the way we have to go.
one of the things that ties into that economy piece as well, and I'm sure you recognize that, is this whole area of transportation. And one of the things I hear a lot, and I know you do from your constituency as well, and particularly since you have I-40 cutting straight through your district, is the need to improve our existing roads in rural areas. Oftentimes I'm hit with the question, ask some of the people you have, when are we going to get our roads fixed? We have these big trucks going down the roads, and they're creating problems for these rural roads that was never equipped for that size transportation. I remind folks that those big trucks and the companies that own those trucks are paying huge taxes as well. So how do you respond when people are pushing that question? When are we going to look at our roads again when all these other things are going on and with COVID-19 going on?
Well, we had a major debacle with the Department of Transportation, and they basically spent the entire budget that they had available to them on private contractors. And I think a lot of times we look at private contractors and say, well, that's a cost savings. Not necessarily, because a lot of times what private contractors do, they come in and they use up all of the funds on high salaries, because private contractors pay a lot more than the state does in public works. And we wind up paying 3 times what it costs, and many times more what it actually costs to maintain our roads. When I worked for the Department of Transportation many moons ago, I was a statewide planner for the Department of Transportation. Although I worked on the Public Transportation Division, the Highway Division was right around the corner from us. And the highways used to be maintained by state employees. And the private contractors have now taken over. And to me, that has been a mistake. And I think we need to go back to the days when the state employees were the ones who maintained the roads. The state employees were the ones who were on duty to take care of them. And now that this budget deficit has occurred, what happened was we had to do what they say in the Bible. We had to rob Peter to pay Paul. We took money from our budget to fulfill the deficit that the Department of Transportation created. There were road projects that they couldn't finish because the money had run out. And the private contractors bid on these roads, but then they wind up paying twice what the bid was. So we've got to rethink this. We've got to reconfigure this whole concept. And I think going back to the Department of Transportation providing its own services is the best way to go.
And with that said, your vision then would be to add back to those departments throughout the state, those divisions throughout the state, the number of people necessary to accomplish the task and chores to maintain these roads, to include, as I've heard over and over again, the need in the agriculture community to keep those ditches cleaned out.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many requests we get to clean out. I get phone calls all the time for DOT to clean out ditches and maintain the roadside. And it's phenomenal, because that was a basic necessity in our communities, in the rural community. That's just one of those basic needs that has to be met. When you have an overgrown ditch on the side of the road, it causes all kinds of problems. You got flooding and all kinds of things that occur as it relates to, because these ditches were clogged up. I've seen, I had a situation where one of my neighbors had to have a repair done that required them to tear the entire road apart because it had gotten clogged underneath the road. And it was a ditch that ran underneath the road, and it was caving in, and it was just terrible because it hadn't been maintained. So that being the case, yes, I am longing for the days of returning those jobs to the state of North Carolina.
We've been able to address a number of key issues, and we're going to take a break. We're coming back for we're actually at the halfway point, so okay. We're going to come back for our next segment. We want to encourage folks, if you have questions, as you have done in the past, email us at weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. That's weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. If you have particular questions for Representative Smith, we're going to give you his number, his contact information as well. And we'll be back in a moment please call a friend. Stay tuned. We Should Know it's on the air. We'll be back in one.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that adds a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody trying to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know it's on there. Reminding you, we come to you each and every week at 2:30 on Tuesdays. 2:30 on Tuesdays. We're simulcast with WCLN Radio, Star Communications Channel 16. The show also airs at 7 p.m. Tuesday, Thursday. Each and every week, you can pick that up on Cable Channel 16, Star Communications. Uploaded to YouTube and all the social media platforms. Following the presentation of this show, you'll see it and pick it up. You can go to YouTube and pick it up. If you want to send it to somebody, it's there for you to do that. I also want to thank all those folks that send us those questions and messages and comments about the show. Keep sending those to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. The snail mail address is Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. Send them to us. We like your comments, good, bad, otherwise, agree, disagree, suggestions for new shows. We'll be happy to entertain those. We are talking today with somebody that is in a position that affects a lot of things that's going on in the state of North Carolina. His input and support, either pro or con, in the legislature of North Carolina as a House member is critical. As a District 21, Representative Dr. Raymond Smith Jr. Representative Smith, thank you again for being with us. In the first half of the show, we've hit a number of key issues. Another subject, and some of these segues right into that, because this particular area and field of discussion that I'll ask you to elaborate on is probably what I call the stability piece of our society and democracy, and that's crime and justice. And when I look at the whole criminal justice field, there's so many issues. The idea of freedom of speech versus criminal destruction. It is so clear to me when you cross that line, it hurts everybody. When you start destroying things, it hurts everybody. We recently had an event here in Clinton that a nonprofit group, Helping Hands, put together that basically was to recognize law enforcement. And on the front lines out there saluting those guys was nobody other than Representative Raymond Smith. I want to thank you for being there. Give us just your observation of where is this divide coming from? And the other piece I want you to speak to is that when I look at it on a national level, North Carolina law enforcement officers are some of the most well-trained officers in the country.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. You're talking about a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I talk about my various career experiences, and one of my proudest career experiences is my law enforcement background. I was a United States Army military policeman, and for me, that was my first career. My first real career was in law enforcement. After leaving the military and joining the reserves, I began a career as a correctional officer working in the North Carolina Department of Corrections in the prison system, and later became a probation parole officer. So this is again one of those many areas that I have personal experience in, and I feel expertise. And it hurts me and it pains me to no end to see this divide in our country. Law enforcement exists for the purpose of maintaining peace and order, for no other reason. And without law enforcement, I don't know, we would have chaos beyond all comprehension. So any doubts about where I stand as it relates to law enforcement is to not know who I am and to not know what I stand for. As a matter of fact, I was endorsed by the North Carolina Police Benevolent Association, which is the largest law enforcement association in the state of North Carolina. They unequivocally know where I stand, and they know I stand with them, and I support them in each and everything that they do. As a matter of fact, I helped to pass a number of bills in the legislature regarding law enforcement officers, to include increasing the punishment for anyone who assaults a law enforcement officer, to add the North Carolina Police Benevolence Association to the North Carolina Standards Training Commission. That makes no sense. Why shouldn't they have a seat on that commission? And of course, respect for the families of law enforcement and firefighters and EMS personnel, protecting employees from retaliation, whistleblower protection. Because there's a lot of, let's be honest, every police officer, just like every citizen, is not perfect. But if there's something going on, they need to be able to know that they can identify that, point it out, and be protected from any type of retaliation. PTSD is real. Again, being a combat veteran myself, I know all about PTSD, and I know how real it is. And those individuals who are on the front lines and first responders and law enforcement officers, they need compensation for that. And right now, we passed the bill for work that they qualify for workers' comp for PTSD. I'm proud of those votes and that support. And of course, being able for law enforcement officers to increase their pay and purchase time towards retirement by getting increased certifications, making themselves better. So getting back to your point about this divide that exists should not exist. It's painful to watch. Protesting is one thing, but looting and rioting is something totally different. Has nothing whatsoever to do with protesting. Protesting is a First Amendment right. You have the right to free speech. Everyone can say what they want to say. I often refer back to my time in the military. When I fought for this country, when I laid my life on the line for this country, I didn't lay my life on the line for just those people who agree with me. I laid my life on the line for the people's right to disagree with me. People who may even hate me. I fought for them too, because this is not about me. It's bigger than me. It's about the country that we live in and the founding principles of our country. And so the shenanigans that are going on with the protests have nothing to do with what the protests are all about. And so what we have to do as a society is we have to look within ourselves, and we have to ask ourselves one very, very important question. Where is our morality? Where are our principles? Where is our integrity? We can't continue along this line of forgetting about how we got to be who we are. And I'm not espousing to one religion or one faith over another, but I believe without faith, this country is going down the tubes, and we must remain faithful. We must remain steadfast, and we must remain committed to one another, because there's only one reason we're here, and that's to look after one another. And so I condemn each and every action that is in any way, shape, form, or fashion violent or destructive. If it's not peaceful, I don't want anything to do with it.
Well, I think you just kind of spelled out what the Constitution is all about with freedom of speech, and that has been there and been used aggressively as a positive part of what our society is. And to some degree, a lot of moderators are talking about how that is being hijacked by the violence and being kind of shoved to the side. And when we see one, it automatically you start seeing them both come together, and somehow we got to separate that out, I believe.
Absolutely. And the key to separating it out really rests with the protesters themselves. If you're out there protesting on the front lines and there's someone next to you about to throw a brick, it's incumbent upon you to grab that rascal and say, hey, not here, not now. You have a fiduciary responsibility to protect that which you are protesting for, and not allow these individuals to come in and hijack and create anarchy and chaos. And I do believe that there are two groups of people out there. I honestly do. I believe that there are people who are absolutely there for a peaceful protest, but I think there are people who are there who may not even be from the area, who were brought in to create anarchy and chaos. And we need to be diligent on both sides, between law enforcement and the good people who are trying to protest peacefully. I believe between the two, we can actually weed out those individuals, and I encourage everyone to do so.
You know, one of the folks that has been on this show, in fact, I've got kind of a track record here of having the colonels with the Highway Patrol on, and Colonel
Yes.
Glenn McNeil was on a while back. And I think when I look at him and the troopers with the North Carolina Highway Patrol, they represent this state well, but they have probably one of the most arduous jobs that exist every day out there, as well as local police departments and sheriff's departments.
That goes without saying. Highway patrolmen put their lives on the line every day, just like city police and county sheriff department personnel, and EMS and firefighters. These are our heroes and our sheroes. These individuals are there riding the roads when we're at home, sleeping peacefully in the comfort of our homes. They are to be commended, not condemned. They are to be supported and not suppressed. And I believe in them in every stretch of the imagination. I want everybody to just stop and think for 1 minute. What would this world be like without them? Think about it. I mean, if there's a bad guy coming through your window late at night, you know, I know people talk about, you know, I have something for them or whatever. Well, sometimes you're not always prepared. You're not always prepared, and everyone is not comfortable with weapons. So we need the police department. We need law enforcement. I remember those many nights working inside the prison system. There's, you know, and that is a reality. The prisons and the jails, they are our protectors as well. Correctional officers and probation parole officers, they keep a watch on us, over us at night. And I absolutely support everything that they do, because I know how critical that job is. There's no order in society without them.
We're going to take another break, and then we'll be coming up on our last segment. I want to encourage folks to, while we're on break and before we come back, if you do have a chance, pick the phone up and call somebody if they're not watching or not listening. Again, you can see this show every Tuesday at 2:30. And again, Tuesday, Thursday at 7 p.m. on Star Communications Channel 16 and WCLN Radio simulcast. And we will be back in one moment.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know's on there. We're coming up on our last segment today. I want to thank a lot of folks for making this show possible today. Particularly, I want to thank Legislative Assistant Susan Thompson. Give her a shout out and appreciation for bringing this guest we have today on. It's those folks in the background, Dr. Raymond Smith, Representative District 21. Those are the folks that make a lot of things happen that we don't see a lot.
Absolutely. Susan is a Sampsonian, native Sampsonian, and she has been a godsend to my administration. And I am so thankful for her. She keeps me on the straight and narrow, and I don't know what I'd do without her. So thank you so much for shining the light on her.
Absolutely. We'll give her 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up.
Okay, I want to kind of segue into something that is clearly on the radar of, I'm sure, everybody listening, and kind of give us your observation. But healthcare has become in the focal point for a number of people, and not just because of COVID-19, but literally as healthcare costs rise. On the one side, I'm hearing a lot of conversation about how much it costs to have families insured, as well as the individual, from public service workers that say, you know, my health care is not that bad if it's just for me, but if I add my family, it's anywhere from $800 to $1,200 a month. People with private health care, I'm hearing comments of $3,000 to $5,000 to even $10,000 deductibles. Healthcare is a huge issue and a costly issue. Give us your observation on what you're hearing, and if there is any possible solutions going forward, since we're in a world of one size does not necessarily fit all.
That is a very good segue. And if I could finish up one little point on the previous segment, there's information out there that's being put out by my political opponent that I want to defund the police. That is an absolute untruth. I absolutely think that we need to enhance funding for the police. So I want to just put that out there for the record. I typically don't address negativity, but since we have this platform, I wanted to make sure that that's put out there. But getting back to your point about healthcare. Healthcare is the #1 topic. It has actually taken a back seat to education right now because we have to live first in order to thrive. And there are untold numbers of individuals, hundreds of thousands of individuals here in the state of North Carolina that are dying from a disease that we can absolutely not necessarily prevent, but we can certainly make sure that not so many people are dying. And that becomes an issue when individuals do not have a doctor that they can go to when they're experiencing minor symptoms. The way that the system is set up right now, if you don't have health care, you have to wait until you get gravely ill so that you can go to the emergency room before you can seek care if you don't have insurance. And that oftentimes is too late. That to me is a travesty, and I think that is exacerbating the death toll here in the state of North Carolina as it relates to this pandemic and COVID-19. When we think about the term universal health care, there are people who want to characterize universal health care as some type of socialist doctrine. Well, let me tell you what we have here in the United States, and especially here in the state of North Carolina. We already have universal health care. Guess what it's called? The emergency room. Everybody who goes to the emergency room gets service, regardless of their ability to pay. That is universal health care. However, it is exponentially more expensive than it would cost for us to expand Medicaid. Expanding Medicaid would cost nothing. The money that we are paying to the federal government through Obamacare, for Affordable Care Act, is earmarked for the state of North Carolina so that it could cover those individuals, those 500,000 individuals who I must add, they work every day. These are not non-working people we're talking about. These are people who work every day. However, they are your frontline, quote unquote, essential workers, the person who greets you at McDonald's or Burger King. These are the people who make too much money to qualify for Medicaid, but not enough money to pay for private insurance. They're caught in the gap. And that's what we call the Medicaid gap. And there are approximately 500,000 or more North Carolinians who fall into that category. A mere vote from the General Assembly would be a game changer. Unfortunately, we cannot get the majority party to bring it to the floor, even for conversation. Even after we negotiated the work requirement as a part of that bill, they still won't bring it to the floor. This, to me, is life and death. We're making decisions about people's ability to live without fear of dying. So what we did compromise on was individuals who don't have health insurance can be covered by Medicaid if they go to the emergency room. Well, again, that's oftentimes too late. So my question is, we can cover them for COVID-19. If they're diagnosed with COVID-19, we can cover them. But what about if they're diagnosed with cancer? What if they're diagnosed with heart disease? What if they're diagnosed with some other debilitating disease? We shouldn't be in the business of picking and choosing which diseases individuals can be covered for. I think Medicaid is an opportunity to create a more healthy society. And that is the foundation of any society, being able to survive. So that being said, I think it's important that we look at this from a people issue and not a political issue. To me, Medicaid expansion is not politics. It's about people. And I can't emphasize that enough. And as we look forward, let's talk about the census. Let's talk about the role that the census plays in all of this. The federal government sends Sampson County and Wayne County $1,600 per person that answers or responds to the census. That's a real number. So for every person that does not respond to the census, that's $1,600 that does not come to Sampson County for social services, for health department, those vital needs that we have in our community. Well, now let's look at what we did with the $1.6 billion that the initial allocation for the COVID-19 relief package. Of that $1.6 million, I think 1.3 million or so was allocated to Sampson County. And the other 2.3 was allocated to Wayne County. Guess why the disparity? Census. Sampson County's census numbers were much lower than Wayne County. What we did, we allocated $250,000 to all 100 counties. The rest of the allocation was based on your census. So if Sampson County felt that 1.3 million was not nearly enough, it is basically because we were undercounted in the census. When the disaster relief packages are sent out, they use census data as the foundation for determining how much each area gets. So it is imperative that everyone be counted, whether you are a U.S. citizen or not, whether you are a resident of Sampson County or not, wherever you are, the day that the count takes place, that's who receives that $1,600 for that person. It is important that we encourage everyone to complete that census. It's that vital. We lose billions of dollars every year because of undercounting in the census.
And to that point, I think we look back and I believe it's every 10 years the census is done. So once it's done, it's not one of those glasses you can go out and fill again.
You cannot, and it determines your representation in the General Assembly and your representation in Washington, D.C. Because if years ago, Representative Larry Bell was a member of a 5-member delegation of representatives that represented Wayne County. Wayne County is down to only 3. Sampson County has only 3 representatives in the General Assembly. Myself, Representative Brisson, and Senator Jackson, we're the only 3 who represent Sampson in the General Assembly. And that is because of the low numbers that the census count. The more you count, the more representation you have. And it's really that simple.
And I think it's imperative when we look at the census to also include our Latino communities in both Wayne and Duplin counties and in the listening area here. Those folks need to be counted as well, do they not?
Absolutely, because guess what? When they get sick, where do they go? To the hospital. Whether they are documented or undocumented, the hospital is going to provide them service. That service is at a cost. And guess who the hospital passed that cost on to? You and I. Those of us who have insurance that we pay for, and we pay for it in the form of higher premiums for our insurance and the higher cost of services. When we go for a minor procedure, it's costing us 2 to 3 times what it should cost us because the hospitals have to recover those lost funds from those uninsured individuals. Again, Medicaid is not just for individuals who don't have insurance. It's for those of us who are paying higher premiums too. It's for everyone, and it will relieve the country and the state in a tremendous way if we can support that bill.
Well, I want to take this moment again to thank you for being with us today. We're kind of coming up on closing the show here, and I think the kind of the summation here, and you use the commentary, if it costs the government, that means it's costing us individually, yes. And we all held accountable for that in one way or the other. Thank you for giving us your observations and enlightenment in different areas, Representative Smith, and we look forward to seeing you again and having you on in the future. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to seeing you again next week on We Should Know. And as always, when we go to close our show, we sincerely look at you and say, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.